Mr. Phillips, you can let me know when we're live. All good? Thank you. All right, may I have a motion, please, to return the regular board meeting to public session? Thank you, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner. Ms. Poland, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Hands up. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I call the regular board meeting to order, and all board members are present. Mr. Bisceglia, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Please be advised, in the event of a fire emergency and an evacuation should be necessary, an alarm will sound. Please note all marked emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we also request that everyone please turn their cell phones to silent and any other electronic devices. Thank you for that. Is there a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented? Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. Dr. McCleary, second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. At this time, we're moving on to board recognition and district recognition. Dr. Brown-Howell, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, President Leatherbarrow. Tonight, as many of you entered the boardroom, you were greeted by the music of the Williamsville East String Quartet. I want to thank them for their incredible performance. We look forward to highlighting more of our music programs at the beginning of each board meeting this year. If we can give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. As we prepared to start the school year, we asked our students, staff, parents, and community members to share what willpower means to them. Willpower was a unifying theme created by our students that has allowed our school community to rally together and move forward in a positive way. So what is willpower? Take a look and listen to some of the powerful messages we received.
Willpower is be safe, be kind, work hard. It's like working together, like from all different schools of this area.
Willpower means keep working hard.
Willpower is unity.
Willpower is the unwavering strength to get through difficult times,
the ability to band together, especially in times of adversity.
The strength to keep going, or if you want to achieve a goal. If you want to achieve, you have to believe.
Strengths of the students in the district who were able to get through the pandemic very strongly, may I add.
Willpower is the strength and resiliency that the students and staff show every day.
I like school so much, I never left. From kindergarten, and I'm an old guy, I'm still here.
I love how everybody comes from different backgrounds and has a lot of different interests and ideas, but we can all come together in one place and we can learn and have a lot of fun.
What I love best about school is having the opportunity to change people's lives, having the opportunity to teach them, coach them.
Seeing the kids' faces every day, their joy, their enthusiasm, and their passion and love for being here.
The sense of teamwork and collaboration among our faculty and staff.
I like gym, science, and social studies. I like learning about history. I like doing experiments, and I like running around and having fun.
I like school because I like learning.
What I love about the Williamsville community is it really does feel like home no matter where you go, whether you're in one of our 13 schools, at Wegmans shopping and you see a friend, or at Billy Wilson Park on the weekend.
The Williamsville community is kind, generous, caring, and supportive.
I love so many things about the Williamsville community. The number one thing that I love is being part of a team that truly wants to make it a better place. They want to change the schools and the world each day. And so working together to get that done is absolutely what I love about Williamsville.
What I love about the Williamsville community
is how caring the teachers, administrators, and coaches are, and how hard they work for the students.
What's that saying? It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes a community to support one another, to encourage one another, to raise one another up.
What I love about our community is the passion, the drive. Even though sometimes we don't all agree, we still have a sense of family. That's how we show our willpower.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you for that. Are there any board acknowledgements at this time? Mrs. Van Sice.
It's actually really difficult to just pick one area. I would just like to extend gratitude to everyone involved, our district leadership, all of our staff, our parents and our students for rolling back in smoothly. But I would like to point out transportation. So Mr. Matursky, working with transportation, and really to our bus drivers, as we all know, it has been extremely difficult, and they are putting their time, their heart and soul in trying to navigate picking up our precious cargo. So I'd like to thank the parents for your patience and really thank all of our bus drivers.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mrs. Van. Dr. Littman.
And I wanted to thank the board. They sent me a lovely card for the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. And I wanted to take this time to wish our Jewish students, our Jewish faculty, and our Jewish community, Lashana Tova, a happy and a healthy new year.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else from the board? All right, we will now move on to public expression. And I'm going to call on Mrs. Kazimierz Ogner to review our public expression format.
Thank you, President Lavarero. Welcome to all who have come to observe this regular board meeting. Although state law does not require us to hold a public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed for a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we take your concerns and questions seriously, and we want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns by email after our meeting, or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. Finally, we recognize that right now, our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that both our school board and community members can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, if you so choose, you may submit your written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period. Per policy 1510, the board will now enter public comments for 30 minutes. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes. You will be signaled at 2.5 minutes so that you may conclude your remarks. The individual time limits will be enforced so that as many members of the public who wish to speak may be allowed to do so. After I call on you, please step up to the podium and state your name. And I do see that there are some speakers tonight that will be discussing a potential personnel concern. To ensure privacy, please only use the employee's position and refrain from using their name. Our first speaker is Jennifer Amon.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Eman, and I'm here to speak to you about my colleague and friend at Williamsville East High School. Right now, this person ought to be finishing up coaching his varsity soccer team's game against West Seneca East. I ought to be home finishing my dinner with my children. Instead, Chris is likely at home, the person is likely at home, and I am here speaking to you about potential respectful steps which might have happened before your vote stripped him, one of the winningest coaches in Western New York history, of his coaching position. One phone call to this person out of respect for his 28 years of coaching service to the district, one meeting with him and his 3 administrators who gave him positive evaluations, one fair investigation of his history as a coach of the varsity team. Any one of those steps, and this person might be where he ought to be tonight, and I might be home with my family. But not any of those respectful steps were taken. I don't regret being on this podium, at this podium tonight to speak for this person. I have known him for over 30 years, and he's a good man. He is kind, he's a gentleman. He has never done anything but champion, nurture, instruct, and care about the students he teaches and the athletes he coaches. While we are here, it is very likely that he is at home writing college recommendation letters or speaking on the phone to college coaches, securing places for his athletes on college teams. He's doing what he's always done, being true to his position as coach, teacher, and human being. This person has had offers to coach elsewhere this fall, but he would not take any of them because he did not want any of his players to believe that he had forgotten them. All of us here tonight supporting him are here because it is the right thing to do. It's what we teach our students: loyalty, kindness, respect, empathy, and honesty. What the board's actions are teaching, intentionally or not, is disregard and disrespect. And the disregard does not end with this person who has dedicated 30 years as an employee to the district. The implications raise questions. What is the future of the professional evaluative process used by our administrators, which has been subordinated by the board? What is the future of anyone who puts herself out there to coach a team, advise a club, or chaperone a dance? What about the teachers in the district? Shall we be expecting the board members to sit in our classrooms now to evaluate us? I wear 79 tonight because any one of us who dedicates ourselves to the kids of this district can be put in this position. Any one of us could find our credentials questioned, our names dragged through the mud, our livelihood cut off, and not even know why. And that is just wrong.
I'm sorry, you're 3 minutes.
Thank you.
over. Thank you. The next speaker, thank you for your comments. And the next speaker is Bill Shaw.
Hi, my name is Bill Shaw. I coach basketball over at Williamsville North. I've known Chris for a long, long time. Not only is Chris a really good friend of mine, but he's a great coach. I think most of you probably know that. But, you know, as good as a coach as he is, he's a better person. And I've known him for 30 years. How long have you people known him? How well do you know him? It's a shame. And Mr. Superintendent, none of my comments are addressed to you. I've been coaching for 40 years in Lockport, in Starpoint, and now in Williamsville. I love it here. You I got nothing but great reviews from the people I know in Buffalo about you. So none of my comments are related or are addressed to you at all. They're addressed to the Board of Education. And my question to the Board of Education is, when did it change? When did it change that your job changed? Because I thought the Board of Education's job was to set district policy and hire and fire one person. You picked a good one, I think, though. When did it change? When did you decide that it was okay to hire and fire? You have a district athletic director, Chris Muchka, who's making well over $100,000 a year. You should fire him. Get rid of him. Save the taxpayers some money. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Chris Muchka is the salt of the earth, a great, great human being, knows athletics like nobody I know. And you just decided that his opinion didn't matter. I do have a question for the board, though. You didn't answer that one about your job. Why wasn't he brought back?
It is our policy not to respond to questions during public expression.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I kind of figured that. He's allowed to teach 100+ kids a day, and he can't be on the athletic field with 20 for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. He's not allowed to do that. He must have done something pretty bad. No, he really didn't, did he? He really didn't do anything. We decided that it was time to change. Unfortunate for the Williamsville School District.
Next speaker is John Comerford.
My name is John Comerford. I reside at 201 Rollingwood with my wife, Hope. Our 5th child will graduate from Williamsville East in 2 years. As a parent of 5 kids, all who have participated in varsity sports at Williamsville East, I provide some perspective to this situation. So many of us are here to support the soccer coach. In August, when we were away, it seems like we all take one vacation. That week of August, a bomb went off. It was when this gentleman, after 27 years, was let go. I think facts are important. Section 6 soccer chairman for 19 years, 391 career wins, 16 divisional titles, 10 Section 6 championships, 2 state Final 4 appearances. Yet after 27 years, you fired him like a Civil War cannon. It's disgraceful. After hearing this board's decision, I immediately reached out. I've never stuck my head out in this community. I've never reached out to anyone. And let me tell you, when I expressed my dismay, I was bulldozed with hundreds of emails, texts, thanking me and the people behind me for caring about someone. We don't treat people like batteries. We don't use them up and just throw them out. This board, it's outrageous what they've done here. To sit here and talk about civics, this is anything but civic your behavior. We pay people like, there's a system in place. We have an athletic director, a school athletic director, a building athletic director, and a principal. They all supported him. This holy trinity of support was behind him. Yet you know more. I would love to have a soccer conversation with most of you. Well, you know what? What really upsets me is how 4 of you abstained, 4 of you didn't vote, 4 of you didn't vote. One of you didn't even show up for the meeting. Why are you running for this office if you're not going to vote? Vote. Vote. I'll tell you, it's really awful how he was treated. It's shameful. I hope you enjoy your seats there because I don't think you're going to have them much more. And I'm going to grade you from here. You get an F for how you've handled this situation. You should be a calming voice. You should, a school board should be the bedrock of our republic. You should be transparent, honest, thoughtful, kind. None of that was shown here. And I'm getting a civics lesson from you as I sit here. I'm very upset how he was treated. We're better than this. We're better than this. And Superintendent, I've heard great things about you. I am sorry you inherited this board.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Pamela Brunskell.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am Pam Brunskell, and I appreciate all the work and effort you put into being on the board. I know you get a lot of grief. I'm here today because, as you know, as everybody knows, we have an issue we need to address. And that is the decision by the board not to reinstate this one man to coach. I have two girls playing soccer for East. One is on varsity, one is on JV. And the decision not to reinstate him was a complete surprise to me, and I would say majority, if not the entire soccer team. It has led to another unfortunate event or incident, if you will, a cause-effect tumble domino. That is, individuals in the community, both parents and students, now believe that if they have a problem with someone in the schools, they can complain to the board. And if there's a handful of very vocal parents and they're lucky enough to have a friend or relative on that board, their concerns will be heeded. And that board member that's a friend or family member doesn't need to abstain. It's a very, very dangerous precedent. It sends a signal that not all in our community are equal. Quite frankly, we deserve an explanation for the board's decision. 2 years ago, a group of angry parents requested an emergency meeting with the board because their daughters violated the code of conduct. The board granted that meeting. However, last month, I and several other families made a similar concern or a similar request, but we never even received a response. Instead, we waited, and a coach I've been told that was recommended by a board member was hired. Again, I appreciate all the time you put into this position. It's not easy. Right now, though, it's time to address the reasoning behind not appointing a man who served our community for almost 30 years as a soccer coach and remains a physical education teacher at East. What could possibly be so severe as to say he's qualified to teach over 100 kids during the day, but not as a coach? We as a community deserve an answer. Thank you.
For your comments. Our next speaker is Shashadar Ramchana Reddy. Okay, I don't believe Dr. Reddy is here. The next speaker is Jack Rafferty.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Rafferty. I am a taxpayer of Erie County. I'm a graduate of Williamsville North High School as of 2017. And I grew up attending Dodge Elementary and Casey Middle School. With the way I see things being run now, I pray to God that you people are still not in charge of the next few years. Continuing all this nonsense. I know I'm not the first person here to address the topic, and I certainly won't be the last. I'll state it simply and bluntly. Forcing children to wear masks in this school district is child abuse. If you're not listening to concerned parents or even taking these clear facts into consideration, shame on you. These aren't your own children. If you really cared about them, then you'd be considering that childhood obesity, among many other health issues, are a much greater problem than the Chinese coronavirus. You're the ones complicit. The responsibility is on you as elected officials who have instead chosen to align with one side rather than upholding the oath of your position to serve the interests of your constituents. Instead of listening to the government, why don't you start acting like adults and listen to common sense and the real science?
Sorry, sir, you need to wear a mask.
According to the CDC, children that are 5 to 14 years of age have a 0.2% chance of dying from COVID. The suicide rate for children of this age is 1.5%. Homicide is 0.7. Cardiovascular disease is 0.6. Drowning is 0.5. Flu and pneumonia, 0.3. Suffocation and COVID are both at 0.2. Putting masks on the children is not for quote unquote safety of the community when it isn't even the children carrying the virus with them at a significant rate. Masking children is selfish. Students can no longer communicate directly with their teachers. Teachers can no longer communicate directly with their students. It was Plato that said, take familiarity away from the people and you no longer have a society that trusts each other. This is a very foundation of our existence and who we were created to be, living amongst each other. This is the very basics of social contract theory, you guys. Don't you get it? We cannot go on like this any longer. We are meant to be human. We are meant to empathize. Yet you and your self-righteous rules and regulations prevent the children from growing up in a world of proper social and emotional standards. These masks are turning kids into robots, and the people in this school district are waking up and they actually care about their children. Listen to your constituents. The government does not know or care about our families at all. You people should be trusting the parents of this district to make the right health decisions for their own children. People are waking up, and I hope to God that you are no longer in those seats the next time I have to come here. I hope you enjoy your remaining time here wearing masks because that's all you'll ever be known for here. Thank you.
For your comments, our next speaker is Kristen Cacchiotti.
Hello, good evening. I'm Kristen Cacchiotti. As some of you probably already know, I'm here today to talk to you about class size guidelines. First of all, I did want to say thank you for looking at class sizes tonight. I know that it's on the agenda and that you're going to be ensuring that class sizes are within the guidelines. I'm not sure when it was posted on board docs, but I was able to pull that up and compare it to some of the information from 2 years ago. Obviously, last year was with COVID and hybrid and all that stuff, we can't really look at numbers from there. So I did see that a good number of our class size averages did go down. So I was really happy to see that. But I do have 2 requests. My first request is that it might be beneficial for you to look at class sizes in July or August. I do realize that numbers can certainly change and will change over the summer, but I would imagine that by July, they're pretty solid and pretty set. So if the numbers were looked at earlier, we could use our budgeted 6 non-allocated teachers at grade levels that are starting the year out at the higher end of the guidelines. This would allow us to hopefully start our classes at the lower ends of the guidelines by adding those teachers that are already budgeted and putting them into place there. This might seem insignificant, but again, looking at the information I had from 2 years ago, adding just 4 elementary teachers throughout the district would have resulted in significant positive changes in reducing our class sizes in those upper elementary grades. My next request is, of course, to take this idea one step farther. I am asking the board to lower class size guidelines to under 25 in the district. Kindergarten, first and second grade class size guidelines were lowered in 2015 with the intention to continue lowering them. Unfortunately, as many of you know, other things took priority and that did not happen. Dr. Brown Hall, I know that obviously you just started with us, you weren't here, but 2 years ago when I started this work, the board received over 100 letters in support of lowering class size guidelines. When I started coming to speak at board meetings, a lot of the members of the board asked great questions about class sizes and also including class sizes in the curriculum extension, or what us old folks would call specials. They had legitimate concerns. Of course, then COVID hit, and again, priorities needed to shift. Totally understandable. Now that we are back to school full time, we have even more reason to continue this good work. Our students have not had a normal school year with daily direct reading instruction in over 2 years. When I think about that from my own perspective, I think of my 3rd grader who hasn't had a normal school year in over 2 years. As all of you know, especially I know Mrs. Leatherborough, you mentioned it at a board meeting, being a former reading teacher, that in 3rd grade we have that shift where it gets harder, writing gets lengthier. We're no longer learning to read, we are reading to learn. That is a huge shift for people who have not had direct instruction since kindergarten. So as a teacher, I was told to expect my students to be about 13 months behind in their reading. So I'm asking this board to continue class size discussions and make changes for our students. Thank you.
For your comments, that will be the end of public expression for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kismark-Bogner. And I do want to thank all of our speakers. Please know that we are listening regarding the comments. The coach, we very much appreciate it. I want to say as president that I wish I could give out information, I'm not at liberty to do that. Okay, I have to respect the individual's right to privacy. And I just need to clear up one thing that was said during Mr. Rafferty that spoke about anti-masking. There was a racial slur that was used to describe the coronavirus, and I do feel like as members of the school district and board, it's really important that we no, I'm sorry. I just feel like it's the right thing to do for me to speak out against that. So we can agree to disagree, but be respectful and uphold all races. And thank you, Ms. Cacchiotti, for speaking on class size. All right, so we are moving on to our consent agenda. We will vote on consent agenda items 6, personnel, 7, business, and 8, special needs and student activities. May I please have a motion to approve consent agenda items 6 through 8? Dr. Lippman, thank you. Ms. Poland, second. Is there any discussion? And if someone feels we need a roll call vote, please let me know. Any discussion? Seeing none. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, I would like to welcome and congratulate our newly appointed assistant principal for Dodge Elementary, and this is Miss Nicole Mayers. And Ms. Mayers, I haven't met you yet, so if you're here, please. Oh, welcome. Please come right up to the podium so we can.
Good evening, Dr. Brown Hall, Board of Education. Today with me, I got Miss Nicole Mayers. She's a mother of 4. All of them went through Dodge. So I guess your path is going to be through Dodge again. She's been a 16-year veteran school counselor at Batavia Central School District, New York State Counselor of the Year, and now she is the AP of Dodge Elementary. This is Nicole Mayers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself tonight. As Mr. Smothers said, I'm Mrs. Mayers, Nicole Mayers, and I'm very excited to be joining the Dodge team. I would like to thank the board, Dr. Brown Hall, Mr. Smelnich, and the district leaders for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be joining the Dodge team and continue to do the work that they've been doing. They've been doing a fantastic job all of the years that I've had children in the school there. I'm very excited to be joining that Dodge family and that community. As Mr. Smelnich mentioned, I do have 4 children that are enrolled in the district, all through elementary through the high school. So I'm highly invested in the Williamsville community, and I'm just very excited to be joining the team and be part of the community. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
The Board of Education extends best wishes and gratitude to the following retirees for their service. Are we doing a picture? Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'll come back to that. So nice to meet you. Okay, perfect. I love it, sneakers. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Polaroid too.
All right, we wish to extend our best wishes and gratitude to the following retirees for their service to the district. Jessica Briandi, North High School, for 25 years of service. Michelle Calandra, I'm going to miss you very much, North High School, 33 years of service. And Mary Summers, Wendy Casey, and High Middle School for 6 years of service. Thank you very much and enjoy retirement. Is there a motion to approve the August 10th, 2021 board meeting minutes? Mrs. Beeger, thank you. May I have a second? Dr. Singh, thank you very much. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries with 1 abstention, so 801. Moving on to our president's report, the opening day for staff and support was September 1st. There was a virtual format, so I wasn't, the board missed out on being able to sort of pick up on the energy and the excitement of the first day, but it was very nice to watch the video of all of that. Dr. Brown, how do you wish to comment on that?
No, I know having those first 2 days of professional development and building learning, and then the day after Labor Day, the teachers really got a great amount of opportunity to have professional development and time setting up their classrooms. The building principals got time to meet with their teachers to really set the tone for the new school year, as we did on the video. So the teachers really appreciated that. I know the principals appreciated the time they had with their teachers, and teachers were able to really get focused and welcome students back in a great manner as they did. So yeah, it was a great time.
Thank you. It was really nice to see. Usually all the music teachers will join on stage and sing the Star Spangled Banner. And this time they were all outside one of the schools.
Yeah, that was
So
cool.
it was really pretty powerful to see that. Any comments on the board from any of that? Okay, thank you. We do have a community forum that's happening on Saturday, October 16th at East High School from 9 to 12. So right now this is set to be in person. If anything happens and we are forced to go virtual, then we will do that. But we were really hoping to keep it an in-person event. Are there any board members who are unable to attend at this time for the community forum on October 16th?
No, I will be able to attend, but I will have to leave early for another commitment.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for letting us know. Is everyone else available? Is there anyone that's not available? This is for our community forum on October 16th. Awesome.
Could you explain to the public the format of that or what that looks like?
Sure. You know what? We haven't really determined it quite yet.
And then, okay.
So
not a problem.
we will have to have that conversation because we've done a few different formats in the past. But as soon as we have that information, we'll be sure to share that out. Erie County Association of School Boards, also called ECASB, their annual dinner is October 7th at Salvatore's. There is a flyer attached in board docs. Currently signed up is Dr. McClary and Dr. Singh. There's also a speed boarding event on October 14th, and I believe we have a department of our district presenting. When I looked at the flyer and I forget, right? Do you remember what it was for?
Yes, for the planetarium.
Yes, the planetarium. So when I saw that, I felt like I really should be there to support our planetarium. And is there anyone else that would like to attend the speed boarding? I'm going to attend that. This is Carrie. And Dr. Brownell, you can check your calendar. Your superintendents are always welcome too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Desserts. All right. Mrs. Carey can manage the registration for any of these events. So if something opens up and you'd like to attend, please let her know. There was a Western New York virtual law conference, which happened on August 10th and August 12th. Mrs. Kazmarek-Boatner did attend, and I see you did submit a report. Is there anything you wanted to add at the table?
No, it was just a very informative event, very comprehensive discussion on many different topics. So I think it's best just people look at the notes that I left in board docs for that.
Thank you very much for doing that. And the other upcoming meeting dates for ECASB are listed in board docs. Does anyone have anything that they wish to discuss in that category for right now? All right, so moving on to the New York State School Board Association. The Board Officers Academy is happening on October 1st. Dr. Singh is signed up to attend, and Ms. Poland, were you going to sign up as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I highly recommend it. I went a few years ago, and it's very valuable, especially for anyone who is considering a board leadership role. The 2021 102nd Annual Nisba Convention will be held October 24th through October 26th in New York City this year. Attending from the board will be myself, Mrs. Van Cise, Mrs. Beeger, and Dr. Littman. And Dr. Brownhall, are you also attending the convention? Wonderful. And Dr. Littman is the voting delegate for the annual business meeting, which will be held virtually on October 18th. And we will be approving and authorizing the voting delegates in our next agenda item. Does anyone have anything they wish to report under Nisba?
Well, just,
Dr. Littman.
I mean, as you stated, within the board packet was the proposed resolution and the resolution kit. So we'll discuss anything.
Yeah, it's our next item.
The next meeting. Okay.
Yeah, actually,
Sorry.
we can bring it up a little bit now. You're right, though. We have a whole nother meeting
Yes.
before you have to vote. But Dr. Littman is correct. The resolution kit and all of the resolutions are listed. If you look through it, there's some that there's a Nisba committee, and some of them they support and some of them they don't support, and they give their rationale statements as for why. So before we have that discussion, may I have a motion to approve and authorize Dr. Littman as the voting delegate as presented? Ms. Poland, thank you. And Ms. Beeger is second. So we're authorizing Dr. Littman to vote on that. So let's have that vote, and then we can have the discussion on the different resolution items. Okay? So all in favor of Dr. Littman being our delegate to vote on our behalf? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carried unanimously, and absolutely you may vote for that, Dr. Littman.
Thank you.
So does anyone, and thank you for being willing to do it, does anyone wish to share their preferences for any of the resolutions or have any difference of opinion than what Nisba supported? So I just had a couple that I wanted to question, and these were ones that Nisba supported. So one of them is Board Resolution 4, and it's asking that there be a reimbursement for student meals. And I'm wondering if this resolution was written before the federal government decided to do that. So I just wanted to check with Mr. Mintersky. Is it true that our federal government is reimbursing us now for all student meals? It kind of makes this resolution a moot point.
Yeah, for this year, we are getting 100% reimbursement for all meals.
And that's breakfast and lunch?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So I'm guessing that this resolution, because I know they have to be submitted earlier, several months ahead, I'm guessing it was probably done that way. Another one, and this is sort of a contentious one, but it's on vaccine mandates. And, Dr. Littman, you just got to vote your conscience on that one.
Which one?
It's number 14.
Okay.
You're authorized by the board to vote your conscience on that, but I just wanted to bring that one to everyone's attention. There was one other one I had a question about, Mr. Mistersky, that would come back to you. Resolution 16 is to abolish expenditure reporting. And the rationale was that what was intended to be a good thing and be transparent became like an overly cumbersome, big paperwork project. And so I didn't know if you wanted to speak to this, if you are familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what they're actually referencing.
Okay.
Our expenditure reporting that the board gets every month would happen regardless of that. It would just happen. The reports we submit to New York State on an annual basis. One is the ST3 that's submitted in September, beginning of September. That's required for state aid. The transparency report that's submitted to New York State Department of Finance is also in September. That one might be what they're referencing. And then the ESSA transparency report is submitted at the end of December. That one is a federal requirement that the state must uphold. So specifically, if it's the one regarding the transparency report to New York State, I would tend to agree with that one. The others, though, are required.
All right, thank you.
And which resolution was that?
That one was number 16. So the ones I was bringing up for just sort of questioning were number 4, 14, and 16. And then there's a list of resolutions that Nisba is against, and those are numbers 18 through 25. I picked out a couple that I was a little concerned about. One was teacher background checks, which is number 18. At first read, I see that as a good thing. This was speaking considerably to our out-of-state teachers that were applying. Nisba was disagreeing with the proposal. Another one was number 19, to streamline the teacher certification process. As a teacher, I personally feel it can be streamlined, especially for out-of-state teachers. But Nisba was disagreeing with this one. And then the other one was 21, which was the coverage of Child Health Plus for all students. So I just wanted to bring those numbers, 18, 19, and 21, to the board's attention in case you want to look at them for next month, okay?
And just to go back to number 16, it is the state school level expenditure report to increase transparency. So you are right, Dr. Materski.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Yes, Dr. Lippman.
Yeah, I would just say, because I have served as a voting delegate through the years, but not lately, but all I would ask of the board is if you have comments or issues you want to bring forward, send them to me by email. And then at the next meeting, we could just discuss anything that has issues at the table. And I think President Leatherbarrow explained, the outline of this very well. So thank you for that.
Correct. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on any of these resolutions? It's a lot to read through, but it was actually really interesting reading to go through.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the one thing you mentioned about the psychological testing,
yes,
that's one of those things we always say in writing, don't add AND in the add stuff. If you had ended the sentence before you added that 2 words, I mean, I think they may have seen a different value in it.
And which policy was that? Or
One, I think you mentioned is it 16 or 18?
And I agree. The rationale for that one was because of the psychological testing component.
Okay. See, I missed that when I was reading it. All right. Thank you. That helps to understand that. So thank you for that.
If I just checked the heart of all the teachers, so big.
If only it was that simple, right? Okay. So we already approved Dr. Littman. We're moving on to item E. So this is our nomination for Area 1 Director. Both Linda Hoffman, who currently serves in that role, and Matthew Kennedy have been nominated by at least 5 member school boards to be candidates for Area 1 Director on the Board of Directors of the New York State School Board Association. And this would take effect on January 1st, 2022 for a 2-year term. So each member school board acting at a regular or special meeting is entitled to cast 1 vote for 1 candidate. So Mrs. Carey is going to do a roll call vote. When she calls your name, you're going to respond with either Linda Hoffman or Matthew Kennedy. Both individuals have submitted letters to the board, which are available in board docs. And does there anyone have a question about either one of those candidates that either myself or Dr. McCleary might be able to answer before we vote? All right, go ahead, Mrs. Carey.
Okay, I'll just call on you and then state Linda Hoffman or Matthew Kennedy. Mrs. Beeker.
Linda Hoffman.
Mr. Biscaglia.
Linda Hoffman.
Mrs. Kaczmarek-Bogner.
Linda Hoffman.
Mrs. Leatherbarrow.
Linda Hoffman.
Dr. Littman.
Matthew Kennedy.
Dr. McCleary.
Linda Hoffman.
Ms. Poulin.
Linda Hoffman.
Dr. Singh.
Matthew Kennedy.
And Mrs. Van Zyse. Okay, I'll submit Linda Hoffman to the Nisba Mary Matheny.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
the board voted and the member from the vote is going to be Miss Linda Hoffman, and Mrs. Carey will cast the board's vote by September 30th, and that's done online, I believe, correct? Thank you, Mrs. Carey. All right, so District Policy Review Committee. This is going to take a little bit of discussion. As a result of discussion under the Committee of the Whole at our last board meeting, I perceive that we have a consensus to form a policy review committee or a series of policy review committees to review and update our Board of Education policy manual. So if we look at it as it is now on board docs, there are 8 sections of policies, which are all available for our viewing in board docs, as I said. I wanted to get your feedback on how many teams you would like us to run at one time. I do feel it would be overwhelming to tackle all 8 categories in one large chunk. I did speak with Dr. Brown Hall about this a few times on the phone. Ideally, we would want to hold these committee meetings either during the school day or before 5 p.m. because many of us have liaison assignments and just family and life commitments in the evening. And I'm sure Dr. Brown Hall wants to go home at some point sometimes. So if we look at the different policy sections, in the 1,000 category, which is the first category, there's 29 policies in that category alone. And then there's only 7 policies in the 2,000 section and 30 in the 3,000 section. So here, I feel like we shouldn't go any further than doing the first 3. But I wanted to open it up to your feedback. If you wanted to start with the first one, we could start there. Or if we want to choose members for all 3 committees tonight, we can do that as well. So any feedback, I open it up. I'll start on this side and I'll go down the table. Dr. Lippman.
No, I mean, I think you made a very good suggestion. And if we just look at all of these, I mean, again, you look at them in order as the way they're written, or should we, in my mind, maybe we should prioritize the ones that are most germane to what we're supposed to carry out. Even though we're supposed to carry out all policies, but there are some that may be more valuable than another.
I feel there's a section of, so like the 1,000 level is bylaws.
Yeah.
So do you feel like there's a certain section that would be a priority to start with?
And, you know, I would be sort of a board consensus, but I mean, I would look at, you know, instruction. Community relations is important. I mean, all of them are important, there's no doubt, but we have to, you know, come up with some creative solution to maybe rank them and then go from there.
Okay.
I mean, that's one way.
Can I say one thing? But so if you do it in order, and instead of hopping around in bylaws, although there's 29 policies in there, most of the bylaws policies are really monitored by law, commissioner regulation.
Yeah.
So there's not really any district specific ones. So there's not much changing that needs to be done, right? Just make sure they're adhering. And most of those are regularly updated from BOCES. So some of the policy sections will probably be easier to get through than others. Bylaws will be one of them. So I do suggest you just still take it in order so you don't get off track. So 1, 2, and 3, I would think you would want to chunk it that way.
Okay.
And then just figure out which board members want to volunteer on each of those as you had discussed prior.
Is that good with everyone to do it that way? Okay, so why don't we just go ahead then and look at the first category. So we need to form a committee for the bylaws. And we can have up to 4 members. We can't go beyond 4 because that would be a quorum. So if you are interested in serving on the bylaw committee, would you want to raise your hand for this?
Can I just clarify about the committee, that I'm interested in helping with this, but couldn't commit to working during the day. So I wonder, I guess, if all of us are going to be in committees, how this will look. If we just have a policy committee that meets to do this work, I'm happy to proofread and read things after hours, but I wouldn't be able to meet during the day. So I don't know if I should volunteer to be part of this work, as I wouldn't be able to meet to discuss.
Correct. And I don't want to limit it to just during the day. We had spoken.
It makes sense though to be able to meet to discuss.
Right.
But,
let me see what Mrs. Van Sice would like to add.
So I'm just wondering, are we looking at potentially 3 different committees running at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, so, my microphone, because I put it way up high, sorry. So we're looking at doing multiple committees at the same time, maybe meeting. And we don't know exactly how many times that would maybe take the entire year, correct?
Running concurrently.
Hey, that just sounds really scary to me. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Well, running concurrently, not meeting at the same time, but running
Right.
concurrently.
But-
So once the committee, I would say this, once you as a committee form,
right,
I suggest then you can develop, with there being a preference for earlier times, you can develop what times you meet then. As long as the committee, the 4 members in that committee dealing with section 1, district policy 1000s or the 2,000 or the 3,000s can set your time and you're committed to those. You can all calendar match who's ever doing section 1 bylaws and then figure out what days and times you're going to meet.
So when you say section 1, 2, and 3, we're talking about the 1,000s.
2000.
One section.
Correct.
So I see that the 2,000 has 7 only
Yeah.
compared to 29
They
or
were
30. So I'd like to be on the number 2.
I want to be on number 3.
All right, so let's start with bylaws. Who's interested in serving on bylaws? And Dr. Brownhall is correct. We can adjust our times and we can figure out a time to do that. So I'm willing to serve on the bylaw committee. Are there 2 more individuals that might be available for that?
I will.
Thank you, Dr. Littman. And we get
I can do it as well.
Okay, so we've got myself, Dr. Littman, and Ms. Kazmierzak Bogner for the first 1,000 level. And then for the 2,000 level, which Mrs. Van Sice pointed out is much shorter. Mrs. Van Sice, you'd like to be on that one?
I will also volunteer for that one.
Okay, so Mrs. Beeger, Mrs. Van Sice, and
I'll be the third.
Mr. Viscalia. Okay. And do you want us to go ahead and schedule the 3rd one right now, or should we just hold, maybe just do 2? Okay, Dr. McClary is saying, let's go for it. So the 3rd level is the community relations, and there are 30 policies in this section. Okay, so Ms. Poland and Dr. McClary, I think, and Dr. Singh. That's perfect. I think that's a great place to start. Mrs. Carey, are you getting the names? I can repeat them back if you need them to. Okay, so may I have a motion to resolve and approve the District Policy Review Committee as discussed? And as discussed, it was myself, Dr. Littman, and Ms. Kazmierzak Bogner for the 1,000 level, which is the bylaws. Ms. Poland, Dr. McClary, and Dr. Singh with the 3,000 level. Sorry, I'm going out of order. Which was community relations, just how I wrote it. And Mrs. Beeger, Mrs. Van Sice, and Mr. Viscalia were the internal operations of 2,000 level. May I have a motion to approve those committees? Thank you, Dr. McClary, and second, Mrs. Beeger. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed or abstentions? Thank you. So the motion carries unanimously. So at least we now have committees formed, so we know like what we're assigned to. And we can take this baby steps, and we can definitely get consult from you, Dr. Brownhall, because I know you've done this work before, which we're novices in this work. Great. So thank you for that, board members. Moving on to item G. This is just a brief message. The approved board goals and the action steps and measures, they were all approved at our August board meeting. I have entered all of this information into our super eval system. And at our last meeting, individual board members volunteered to monitor specific goals. Throughout the year, you may log on to the super eval system to input the evidence of meeting each of these goals. So the measures that are listed, the action steps, you can put in that work. And typically we put the month that we addressed it, and we put the action item as well, so that you can go back and cross-reference it and look it up. Okay, does anyone have anything to add about our board goals? Yes, Mary Bogner.
Just to clarify, I know in the last year, we submitted the evidence directly, I believe, to Mrs. Carey to create a PowerPoint. So will this, if we are doing it throughout the year, then Mrs. Carey can get that information to create her PowerPoint?
We can, yeah, because she has access to super eval. That was the first year we assigned individual board members. And I just want to make sure that you all have access to super eval and are able to add information. I want to make sure that I don't have like a different level of access just because I'm the president. So I'm able to add information, but maybe we can test it out just to be sure. Because it would be easier if we had it in super eval throughout the year, because then it's more of a living, breathing document instead of something like, oh, it's January, it's time to monitor. Let's go back and scramble and see what we did.
No, I agree. Thank you. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Thank you. All right, that's all I have for my president's report. So we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
Exciting.
Brown Hall, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to get started with the community update first. And the community update really is focusing on school reopening. There we go. So we officially welcome students back to the first day of school on September 8th for full-time in-person instruction. So I had the ability and the pleasure of going around Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and this past Monday, yesterday, visiting every school, myself and Dr. Bailey. We spent time in every school. We wanted to talk to students, to staff, to see the students engaged. And it was really, really good because as you can see, Nick Filipowski and David joined us and they got a lot of pictures of students welcoming back with our hashtag willpower. So the students were excited to be back. The teachers and the staff were excited to have them back. And it really, really, you could see the liveliness in the hallways. The hallways just really came alive. And it was really good to see engagement in the classroom. I mean, students were active in their classrooms all of the days, you know? And really, I was concerned with what the cafeterias would look like also. So we made it a special point to talk about the cafeterias, to visit the cafeterias. And I want to let you know, because I saw this on the cafeteria plans that were submitted to us about QR codes at the high school in the cafeterias. And this was new to me. So students, because we have to have the seating charts for, you know, the contact tracing, the students can use their phone to log in the QR code, or if they don't have a phone, they can use one of the Chromebooks. They log in, they scan the QR code, and then they just log in their name and stuff. And it creates a seating chart for the cafeteria. So if we need to do contact tracing. So at the high schools, I thought that was so cool. So I want to highlight that also. And one thing I want to say, our principals and our school administrators really know their buildings. They really do. You can see the easiness of the transition back into the building with the longevity of most of our administrators. They really know their buildings, they know their families, and it just allowed for a smooth transition. So I was very, very happy with those school visits, and I'm looking forward to going back also in a couple of weeks. Health and safety. Oh, I think I skipped. Transportation. Okay, so transportation was a concern at the beginning of the year. As you heard, Vice President Van Cise really praising the work of Mr. Matursky and Graham in the transportation department. They've been doing a lot, answering parents' concerns and questions regarding transportation. As you know, we're not insulated in Williamsville. The transportation problem, the driver shortage, is a national problem. What I will say here in Williamsville, we are lucky that we are only short 12 drivers. Now that number will be decreasing. We have hired, well, STA has hired 5 additional drivers, and it takes a little while for them to be trained and to get them on the road because they have to spend a certain amount of time with current drivers also. But 5 additional drivers have been hired, and then we have drivers returning from sick leave. So the numbers of tardiness of our buses will be decreasing. For example, Mr. Matursky gave me the numbers yesterday. I'm sorry, it was this morning. We had 16 late buses, and 8 of those buses were late less than 10 minutes, right? So there are 2 buses that Graham and Mr. Matursky are looking into because they were really late. And so we're just trying to see how we can be more efficient on those routes. But as I said again, we're in the process of hiring additional drivers, and we will continue to do that just to make sure we also have some substitute drivers available, and the technical issues with the MyStop bus app have been resolved. So we're heading in the right direction. And once we get into a routine, it will, after we hire the new drivers and get into a routine, it will get easier and easier every week.
I have a question about transportation. So when I read the initial guidance, my understanding was that it would be 1 student per seat unless they were in the same household. But I'm seeing that the buses are full. And so is this like type of guidance that, you know, has the disclaimer to the extent possible, or is this guidance that we are completely following.
Yeah, it's absolutely to the extent possible.
Because right now we do have primarily full buses.
We do.
Okay.
Right. And I know we indicated that we would, we would do that to the extent possible, but that we would load our buses. And that was allowed also in the guidance.
So that parents know that, because it might change whether or not they feel comfortable having their child be on the bus.
Correct. Mrs. Beeger?
I just want to express my gratitude, Dr. Brownhall, to you, Mr. Matursky, and all in transportation. We've heard a lot of concerns from families. Of course, we know that the first day of school, but I appreciate, rather than the district just saying, well, it's going to get better, to really look targeted what those buses are. You're tracking those, you're checking to see which buses are late and looking into those routes. That's how we're most efficient to solve problems. So thank you for taking the time. I know that's important to obviously the kids, but the families as well. We want to make sure that our buses are.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your targeted attention to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Health and safety. So we ask parents to please continue to complete the daily COVID-19 health screening. The daily reminders to complete the screening and temperature checks will be sent at 6 a.m. This next bullet is extremely important. If staff members or students exhibit signs or symptoms of COVID-19, please stay home, even if you are vaccinated. So we want to be very clear. Vaccinated individuals are still able to, unfortunately, catch COVID. You are able to be a breakthrough case, and with that, you do have a contagious period. So we ask, if you are experiencing any signs or symptoms, please stay home, and we encourage you strongly, please go get tested, okay? So if you can please, if you don't hear anything else tonight, please make sure you hear that. Daily COVID-19 reports are available on the district's COVID-19 education page also. So they are not sent or emailed anymore. They do appear on the district's COVID-19 education page. You can check that daily. And please don't get me wrong. Everything we do and say here is important, but that one was very important. So all staff members and families were sent information regarding surveillance and proximal testing. This testing is optional. If staff members and students choose to participate, they can opt out at any time. This is where we will do, it's a random sampling of testing. So just because you opt in does not mean you will be tested. Okay, it's optional and it's a random sampling. But I need to be clear, this testing does not satisfy the requirement for all individuals working in a P12 environment to show proof of vaccination or undergo mandatory weekly testing. So we are in the process now of collecting information of individual staff members who have been vaccinated. Those that do not provide proof must undergo mandatory weekly testing. This testing, the surveillance and proximal testing, does not qualify for that requirement. All right, so it does not qualify for that requirement. I want to be clear on that.
May I ask a question about that? I was at a PTSA meeting yesterday, and one of the questions about that was if parents do elect for their child to be part of the optional testing, would that happen at their own school building, or would they need to travel to another location?
Yep, and we got clarification. I was on that meeting with you. Absolutely. So it will happen at their school site. Absolutely. So we are partnering with the Erie County Department of Health, who is partnering with Buffalo Home Care. And so those nurses will be traveling to the school sites to conduct the testing.
Excellent. And for parents who aren't sure, how do families choose to do that for their children to participate?
So there was a letter we sent out, and on the letter, it had the links for additional information, and then they can call our offices or they can call the Erie County Department of Health. But the links were there also for families to register to participate in either of the screenings.
So if that got lost in the shuffle, families should just go back into WITS to find that information. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next item I want to direct your attention to is the class size report that is available in board docs. Now, the class size report here, you will notice that all of our classes and the guidelines are on this report. So the class size guidelines for grade K are 16 to 20, Grade 1, class size guidelines 19 to 23. Grade 2, 20 to 24. Grade 3, 22 to 26. Grade 4, 23 to 27. Grade 5 and grade 6, 25 to 29. And I'm happy to report that all of our classrooms are either within the guidelines, within the range, or below the range. And so that is something that we all are very happy about. We had a parent speak about that this evening. I want to thank Dr. McKenna and his staff for staying on top of this and compiling this information and working with the building principals who've supplied this information. So the class size report, as the parent said when they were speaking, is in board docs also. Any questions about that, Mrs. Beeger?
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm being chatty Cathy tonight, but
No.
I am very appreciative of this report. It's something that's important to me and I've asked for, and I'm very grateful to see that our class sizes are all within the range. Just one of the pieces that I wanted to point out where maybe we can continue the conversation is around the curriculum extensions. And we see that those same class size guidelines don't apply in the same way. And I know that might be because, there's larger groups for PE or things of that nature, but that's something that I think we can continue to discuss. The other question that I just wanted to ask is, as we're looking at these class sizes, is the district looking at any of the current construction that is happening in our area? Because while these are our set class sizes, just for example, like within a mile or two radius of where we're sitting tonight, there's tons of houses that seem to be going in off of Dodge Road and off of Heim Road over by New Road, and there's just this little pocket. I know we get someone to come in and look at those numbers, but I just am curious if the district is looking at that and if we will have room to accommodate as families start to go in as our community continues to grow.
Right, and that's a great question. And I know that at the November board meeting, I believe, is when we have the outside company working with the Amherst Town Board to really look at what buildings are, what new build is going on in new construction in the district. How many of those are residential? How many of them are not, senior living? How many students might we anticipate getting? And that's all factored in. I know Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo works very closely with them to keep an eye on our enrollment and our enrollment management so that we can plan out years to come as a district.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
And I think I had asked that question too about, what space is available in the buildings that we currently have. And as we add in the universal pre-K to the schools, which I think is an excellent thing. I'd love to see that in every one of our buildings, but do we have the space? So.
Right. And we were very, very lucky that the schools we added the universal pre-K in, we were able to find the classroom space.
Right.
But I will let you know that going around to many of our schools, many of them are at the capacity.
Right.
They really are at the capacity. So that's why when we talk about class size and we look, and if we increase enrollment at some of our schools, it might not be adding another class, but trying to keep the student to teacher ratio low by maybe adding a teacher aide or additional supports in the classroom, because, adding extensions to school buildings is very costly. And in some places you can't even do that.
Right.
Right. So thank you very much for that point. But that space utilization that you were talking about is something that we have to consider when we look at the enrollment management for years to come in the district.
Dr. Brownhill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So with that, and I know we look at years to come, but this seems to be a growing trend, right? And we know that we really don't have a lot of space. It is a concern, I think, for all of us, because we know those numbers most likely will increase. We do know that many students are currently at private that might return, but we also, although there's not a lot in the e-remote academy, that's a little factor. And potentially some parents are parentally teaching and homeschooling this year. So I'm happy to see that we're within the range right now, but there are circumstances that could have also put us here. So just really being cognizant
Absolutely.
for the following year and years to come that we want to, as it is already, lower guidelines, but then we have these other factors, and the space is a huge thing of really being looking at our options and being able to think outside the box, I guess, to look for spacing to meet class sizes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. But you're very right. That's why that enrollment coupled with the space utilization are so very important to see what is possible and what can be done. Next, we have our diversity, equity, and inclusion update. So I will say there's been a lot of focus on DEI statewide, and it's really, really important. And many board members, when I've spoken to you, there is a focus on diversity, equity, and instruction. So we wanted to present in October, myself, Assistant Superintendent Balin, and Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo, to show where we've been as a district, where we're currently at, and what we see in the future coming as it revolves around in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if we can get that up, Nick. Thank you very much. So first, please know that this entire presentation is really built around the culmination of planning for the implementation of DEI. I know there's been presentations in the past by Dr. Balin and Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo about diversity in our school district, but now that the New York State Board of Regents launched an initiative to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools across New York State, as first steps in the initiative, the board released a policy statement and draft framework. It's a call to action. Now, this was released in May of last year, but I will let you know, Williamsville did not wait for that to begin their diversity work. The diversity work had already begun years prior, and we wanted to make sure we highlighted that for you. But we are going to use this New York State Education Department framework to really base a lot of our work moving forward. And you all, in the packet you have this evening, you do have policy 3431 for a first reading. It is the Williamsville School District policy on DEI. So in their call to action, there were purpose and intent, right? So I'm going to read these three statements because these are the ones that really jumped out and really what we're going to base our work on. So all students benefit when their school implements strong diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices, including academic, cognitive, civic, social, emotional, and economic benefits, knowing that all of our students will have to operate in a global society. So anything we put in place for DEI will benefit all of our students. In partnership with parents and families, it will empower students from all backgrounds to visualize successful futures for themselves and provide them with a sense of belonging and self-worth. So that belonging piece is really important. And you will hear it again when we talk about the basic definition of inclusion. That I is so important. It shall be the policy of the New York State Board of Regents to encourage and support efforts at the state and local level to create within every school an ecosystem of success that is built upon a foundation of diversity, equity, inclusion, access, opportunity, innovation, confidence, trust, respect, caring, and relationship building. I know all our board members agree, and our parents agree too. Those are the words you want to hear when we're talking about educating our students in our district, making sure that all of our students are included, have access and opportunity, build confidence, trust, and that relationship building piece is also so important. I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo.
Thank you, Dr. Brownhall. As a result of these efforts, the focus is placed on several critical elements for students and members of our school community. These include areas of belonging, appreciation, personal experiences, reflecting individual identities, the impact of words and behaviors, unity, and relationship building. And I think that during our little video of willpower, you saw a lot of these terms pop up from kids. So as you can see, these are terminologies and these are phrases that we've been implementing and sharing with our students, and it's sticking with them. As you can see that they're able to regurgitate these on their own when asked to. So It's really great to start seeing that the foundational pieces are being put in place at all levels. On this slide, we've reflected a summary of how we see the work come to fruition. Our district, our school district, and school communities as a whole are committed to supporting each and every individual with an appreciation of multiculturalism that focuses on opportunity, respect, caring, and relationship building. And these are foundational pieces that I think we're seeing more and more of. A lot of emphasis being put on a daily basis through curriculum, through readings, through just having opportunities to be with one another. And the fact that we're in person together is going to bring this to a whole nother level. So that challenge is going to be much more realistic for our kids to achieve. Our state documents also include common language and definitions so that these areas, these are communicated and understood. We featured several for you on the next few slides. And as you can see, there's a definition of diversity. And as we implement something new, it's always important that the language be common among the entire district. So when you have 13 schools, it's important that not only the schools, the kids, faculty, and the community understand when we talk about diversity, what it really entails. Next definition is equity. Inclusion. And one that certainly cannot be forgotten, which is probably one of the strengths of our district, happens to be our diverse culture. And we've shared this definition with you in previous presentations. But schools, as I want to point out in the bolded area, schools then become a meeting point for cultures containing children and adults who bring with them multiple facets of their identity, along with unique experiences and perspective. We learn so much from one another when we have opportunities to just listen and talk and learn more about, what life is like in their home. At this point, I'll bring up Dr. Valen.
Thank you, Mr. Scanzuzzo. Thank you, Dr. Brownhall, and good evening, Board of Education. It's great to be here with you this evening. In our next segment of our presentation, this is something that will be ringing familiar with you, as we've talked about this before. New York State Education Department released a culturally responsive sustaining education framework. And what this does for us is it helps educators, but really the school community as a whole, help to understand what student-centered learning environments do. And those have very specific purposes, and you can see some of the schematics on the screen actually speak to this. These affirm that racial, linguistic, and cultural identities are important within our school community. We want to prepare students for rigor and independent learning, and also develop their abilities to connect across lines of difference, and certainly elevate historically marginalized voices and empower students as agents of social change. This framework, as you may recall, was finalized and released to the field just prior to school closure as a result of COVID-19 in the late winter and early spring of 2020. We have several examples that we presented to you during the 2021 school year of how this framework was coming to life within our schools, and I just want to share a few this evening with you as well. With the creation of a welcoming and affirming environment, you've heard much about restorative practices and community circles. We do continue to strive to implement those in each and every classroom. As schools were opening this year, that was a primary focus as we welcome students back to school. That connectivity certainly was first and foremost, and we spent a considerable amount of time talking with our building principals and also our faculties about how we are going to welcome our students back, and making those connections was really a strong component of that. Certainly our communication with parents of our English language learners, as you know, we communicate in their language of preference. We have that recorded in WIT, so we know what parents' preferences are, and we do hold to that and respect that for our families. We have multiple workshops that we have had for teachers and staff. Much of our professional development, which you'll hear about a little bit later this evening, is to learn and understand cultures of our students. And it even transcends beyond that, as Mr. Scanzuzzo said. And we looked at that definition of diversity, and looking at that closely, you can see that culture is one component. It speaks to multiple facets. And I can assure you that all of those are so important within our school community, and certainly are a focus for ours that we've maintained and certainly will maintain even more so moving forward. Under fostering high expectations for students, again, this is a very, very large component of what happens within our classrooms. We do speak of events, particularly in social studies. And as you know, there is a Board of Education policy that also provides guidance on issues and topics as they're addressed in the classroom. As you know from past presentations, we have hosted a number of events in our schools to further understanding, talk about acceptance, and also embrace our differences and our similarities within our school community. As far as curriculum and assessment, really this can be a presentation in and of itself, but you've heard a lot about, and certainly to date know, all of the work that's been done in our ELA curriculum and in our classrooms with regard to reading and writing workshop. One primary component of this has been our extensive library collections, and much is even being done this year, as you may recall from some of our grant expenditures. One primary area that we are focusing on is continue to add to these libraries so that we have a diverse, rich, and deep collection of resources for our students, not only so they can see themselves in the literature, but so they can see authors that come from all backgrounds and all cultures, all identities. It's very, very important that students see that. We talked about windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, and that is an outstanding resource, again, that we shared with you in a previous meeting. Students' active participation in social emotional learning certainly is one area, again, that you've heard much about to date. That is something that, again, fits right into and aligns nicely with the work on DEI. So one thing that I think we want to really keep in mind and really know that is important is all of the initiatives that we speak to you about, one being SEL, certainly DEI, and what you'll hear about again from our strategic planning, they are purposefully intertwined and infused with one another, and that is a critical component moving forward. And certainly as we move forward, we look forward to other opportunities as we address all of these topical areas to bring you even more information this year. So one of the items we also just wanted to revisit briefly is just to remind, as Dr. Brown-Hall had shared already, is the history of Williamsville and our work has been extensive. This dates back several decades. We shared with you at one of our previous board meetings some of the history regarding community dialogue on diversity. There were matters that were dealt with in the 1980s that actually resulted in some of our policies that were actually put into place. And certainly as we go through policy review, we always look to see if there's anything further that needs to be addressed or updated. But what this did for us is long before there was a DEI initiative from New York State, our district was already committed to ensuring that we are embracing everyone within our school community. So we have to really applaud that those efforts were made many, many years ago, and they continue to this day, and they will continue as we move forward. One of the policies that we want to bring to your attention that you're very familiar with in our community, may also be familiar with, is policy 8360, which again has been in place for some time. If you look through other districts' policy manuals, you will see a very similar policy in place there. But what this speaks to is specifically cultural diversity and religion in our schools. And again, the purpose is for an inclusive environment which promotes tolerance and understanding to be created in our school community. It also speaks to, which is also a very important component, is legally what is allowable and permissible within a school. Because oftentimes questions will be coming up, as you can imagine, about religion and where the lines may or may not be drawn. And our policy really does address this very nicely. So what is constitutionally permissible, educationally sound, culturally sensitive, and also age appropriate? Those are actually 4 filters that are used really to determine the appropriateness of information within a classroom. Certainly from a teaching and learning perspective, teaching is always handled with great care. sensitivity, and respect for all members of the school community, and an environment where students of all backgrounds feel comfortable in sharing their traditions and their cultures and their backgrounds is a goal of our district and a means of promoting understanding as we move forward. It is important to note that this is not studying about religion to be devotional or pressing for a certain religion or convincing or indoctrinating. That is not the purpose of this. Again, it's to create understanding of all of the members of our community, because we all bring with us very individual pieces from our own individual worlds, and that is all important. So when you hear words like belonging and identity and voices, it's really critical to really focus on those, because that is really what we're looking for, not only for our children, but also for the adults in our community. And I think that's an important note to make. You may also realize and know that music is a big part of this. So you may or may not be familiar that we include an array of music in our music program, and that's purposeful because, again, we may have music that has some underpinnings when it comes to, let's say, a religious component, but again, it is not to teach religion, it is for value of the music, and we want a broad repertoire of music in our concerts. They are actually reviewed. Michael Russo, our instructional specialist, does actually look at all of the music that's presented. And again, the idea is that we want balance, we want inclusivity, we want to make sure all members of our school community see themselves and hear themselves in these beautiful performances. And we should also know that it's also respectful. I've gotten questions over the years about various pieces, and people appreciate it. They notice. We've had members of our community come from various faiths saying, it was great to see that all of what you included was there in our programming. So I know that our parents are really paying attention to and actually value that part greatly. So there's a whole component of this that speaks to music, and I'm very proud of what we've done. Just to highlight briefly a couple of other things, and they're all here on the screen, so I will not necessarily read these to you, but over the years, many, many resources have been created for internal use and also are very useful references for our families and parents moving forward. Again, the most important piece here that we can take away is that these represent multiple expressions of diversity as assets. That is what diversity is. It is a strength. We are so fortunate in the K-4 realm to have the infusion of multiculturalism. We've presented links here so that in the presentation, if someone desires to go to our website, these are all publicly available. This is a curriculum that's specifically designed for K-4, talks about patriotic, cultural, and religious holidays and the basic outlines and understandings taught for each across those grade levels. Grade 4 is really where you first start to see chronological study of history. So of course, teachers will reinforce many of the understandings as they get deeper into that curriculum. We also have a cultural diversity resource booklet. This is served primarily as an internal resource, and this presents information on a number of religious groups, religions, and also a question and answer for outside presenters about our policies. Again, it's very important should we have visitors to our classrooms, and in COVID there wasn't a whole lot in person, but certainly from a virtual perspective, anytime we're inviting someone in to come to our classroom to speak on any of these topics, we want to make sure they understand, again, the certainly the First Amendment piece, but also what is acceptable within a classroom, and really give some tips and tricks about how to facilitate some discussion points, because the idea is we want diverse thought there. So it isn't, again, about one particular viewpoint or one particular person's opinion. It really is about balance and understanding and developing a depth that there is a multitude of perspectives and understandings to be had. We have a district brochure, which includes that information for outside presenters. Of course, you are aware about our district calendar, as you were instrumental in helping to bring that about. We also have a more detailed version of that, which is our district and religious observances calendar. And this goes through a whole host of observances, which is developed each year for building administrators, teachers, and staff to utilize. This document highlights both religious and cultural observances, which may impact school activities. And the purpose is to assist all faculty and staff in planning, as well as raise awareness and understanding of various faiths and cultural communities represented in Williamsville. So quite a helpful resource that we have. I literally could probably go on for quite some time about professional development, but a lot of that you've heard already. So The last time we were together, I gave you a listing of several different titles of some of our professional learning. I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are with that. That is still continuing. Added to our catalog, if you will, of professional learning opportunities also include SEL signature practices, using equity-centered skills in the classroom, culturally responsive teaching, which we did several seminars and series of beginning last year, creating a culture of belonging, identity, and engagement. And this is in addition to various book studies and things that are done independently, both here at the district, but also at the school level. And of course, clubs and different leadership opportunities for students continue to exist. We are very excited about our strategic planning continuation that we are commencing this year. We are looking forward to continuing with that and really continuing the momentum that we've had with regard to that plan. A large part of it will be focused upon DEI. In fact, every goal, one of the strategic pieces of that is in the 3 goal areas that were set for strategic planning, that each and every one has a direct connection to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We had shared with you, and we will not go through this in detail again, but Mr. Scanzuzzo and I met with several professionals and experts in the field of engaged in these efforts that help to inform some of our steps moving forward. We have shared all of this information with Dr. Brownhall. We are continuing our work with UB. The trauma and trauma-informed care has gone exceptionally well. So we are continuing with that. And we have distributed the CRSF to all of our staff. And Linda Ruay, our instructional specialist for professional development, will personally be delivering professional learning to every faculty across the school district in all 13 buildings. So that's going to be a big piece of our work moving forward. You've heard from Mr. Scanzuzzo on our restorative practices, and of course, PD will continue in the rich fashion that it has. So again, just a couple of recaps and just briefly, there are a whole host of activities still occurring at the building level. When Dr. Brownhall and I visited schools, we talked briefly with the principals. We are planning on returning in a couple of weeks, but they know one of their areas of focus has also been helping to carry on our important work here for DEI. They're committed to enhancing their libraries, their resources. A number of them have already completed or are initiating book studies. Their SDM endeavors are still focused on much of what we're speaking of here. Their celebrations took a bit of a turn with COVID because, as you know, much of that was in person. But for example, East, instead of they're doing Flavors of East in person, they actually did a virtual book and put a really nice resource together. So where there's creation, there's also innovation. So sometimes it's just having it packaged a bit differently. We still have clubs going on. I think we'll hear more as the year goes on. That piece will, of course, pick up. And our district initiatives really speak to the efforts we've already made, but certainly the focus on the strategic plan will be the next large one that you'll hear more about, and certainly those school-based items. So Dr. Brownhall, I know, will cover a lot of what's coming up next. We are very passionate about this topic, and we look forward to, again, updating the board as we go through the school year. So thank you for the opportunity this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balin. So next steps and timeline. So you heard the history where we were at. Dr. Balin and Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzzo really went through what we have in place now in the district. Now, next steps and timeline. It's really important that the foundation be laid throughout the entire district, right? So we all have that common language, the common foundation. So the DEI overview will be mandatory for all faculty and staff. So all faculty and staff will get that. So we're all operating with the same language, right? And the strategic planning efforts that I mentioned, Dr. Balin mentioned, Mr. Scanzuzzo mentioned, are so important because that's how we get our staff, our community members, our Board of Education members involved. And that is how we take DEI to the next level. So how do we know that it's infused in our buildings? What does that look like? The strategic planning efforts will really identify that. Continued professional learning for faculty. So Dr. Balin explained there's a lot of PD that is available. And then what new PD opportunities will be available for our faculty and staff, because we want our teachers, our administrators to keep growing. Administrative professional learning opportunities, providing the solid foundation. So there will be monthly meetings throughout this school year for our assistant principals and our principals, specifically focused on DEI. and district and Board of Education learning opportunities and messaging. And that's something I heard from board members too. You want to be included in some of the PD opportunities, some of the learning, and making sure that we're all sending the same message. So it provides a common language for us all to use also. A multi-year commitment. So I want to say DEI is not something that we do and we're done with. It's not something that we just do to be in compliance. Even though New York State Board of Regents passed a resolution, their call to action, it's something that we really want to take our time with, do it slowly so that we know it's going to be sustainable in our district. And the multi-year commitment is important because that student engagement and supports, it will really support that. Family and community engagement, that all is involved in DEI, strategic planning. Diverse school and learning opportunities, workforce diversity, that's something that we have to address in our DEI plan. How do we diversify our workforce? How do we change our recruitment methods? Making sure that our interviewing and all of everything we look at on a resume isn't prohibiting someone from moving to the next step in an interview process. Our policies, Dr. Bella mentioned it, the board, you're going through policy review. So making sure that we don't have any policies that would have an adverse effect on any of our DEI initiatives, DEI committees at each school, and the development of our DEI plan. It's in our board policy, and it's one of my goals also as superintendent. So that DEI plan will be something that you can hold me accountable to, and it's something that will provide a framework for our district. And it will be very involved so that we can see all the steps that are necessary to have a successful DEI plan in the district. Our goal, a comprehensive, inclusive approach to advance and enhance our efforts as a school district to support all of our students, families, and staff. Also, a committed, layered, and thoughtful methodology and process over time that avoids an isolated, siloed approach, resulting in sustained changes and enhancements that become part of the culture and fabric of the organization. So that second bullet is so important and why we must be very thoughtful and take our time in order to enact a DEI plan. So that's where we're at right now. Now, many board members have shared many examples and many thoughts and opportunities on what you think a good DEI plan should entail. And so that's why it's important that we get your thoughts also when we begin our strategic planning. Any questions? Vice President Van Sys. Oh, I'm sorry.
So more of just a comment. I think this goal that you just touched on is exactly what encompasses what we just heard today, that we have a committed, layered, and thoughtful process.
Right.
We have been talking about diversity. I know we're actually, as a district, ahead of the game. I am really pleased with seeing this plan and this PowerPoint and going through it and hearing the details again. We now have action steps to take to get us there. I'm very pleased to hear about the professional development. We know it's in there, but to really recognize that staff needs to learn, but also practice in the classroom, the culturally responsive, teaching. I also am happy to see that DEI will be such a focus with the strategic planning. And we all know, right, that children and our students sometimes act because of learned behavior. So to see the K-4 inclusion of that multiculturalism is great to really shape that they have this diverse thinking, because we know that they're so impressionable at a young age. And I will say that it's very exciting. I have 2 children, one that has gone through the system, another one that is currently in high school. And I'm going to say that the character that they have is because of Williamsville and what they've learned. And the acceptance, the tolerance, but we all know that there's always room for growth. So this plan fosters that. So just a comment, I'm very grateful and I'm very pleased in seeing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One thing I do want to say about the cultural observances calendar. So there's just an idea I want to share with you that was shared with me with Dr. Singh. because we can always advance what we're doing also, right? So if we have the cultural observances calendar and it's actually interactive. So if community members or teachers want to go to that calendar and click on one of those cultural observances and have a video pop up, right? And really a teaching of what that is. So say, the Rosh Hashanah is on the calendar. If a teacher clicks on that and Dr. Lippman pops up and explains what Rosh Hashanah is, right? And so those are teachable things that we can also get the community involved in. And so that's some sort of project that Dr. Singh thought would be a great idea that we can explore and advance in our district.
So can I add based on that? Because Dr. Brownhall and I had this discussion.
We did, yes.
I've already talked to Mrs. Greco, so we are going to explore how to make that come alive. It is a wonderful resource as is, and I think it can be further enhanced by doing some of the things that were suggested. So we are already looking at the possibility of making that happen.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other
I just
questions?
had a comment.
Christine, go ahead.
I was looking through the district goals and I was really very happy to see that the whole timeline for setting up a committees for district-wide, school-wide, and for the whole year. And a lot of community members have reached out to me asking, when is this going to start? We want to be in there. So once we have a plan to set up a committee, I'm sure there's a process in which you're going to reach out to the communities to get their input if they want to join and if they want to contribute their time and effort to this.
Right, and I see Dr. Bellman shaking her head also. I know we have a meeting set up. It's either this week, Thursday, or next week, Thursday,
do.
to sit down, assign dates, and then figure out how individuals, because I know there'll be interest to be on these committees, but we have to figure out what that will look like to get representation on these committees.
That moves us on to item D. The
I'm sorry.
District goals. I know that was sort of what your question was. Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey.
Thank
This
you.
was
Thank you very much.
Superintendent Esposito,
Thank
Dr.
you all.
Bellman,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. And board members, thank you very much for your feedback and your questions. So yes, and I will just share this. So in board docs, the district goals and activities are listed and the detail is listed in there also. The goal activity, the timeline, the individuals involved, the success indicators, the cost, and then there will be progress updates in January and towards the end of the school year in June. So I'm not going to go through each and every one because it is quite extensive, but it is available in board docs. If you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to move to our policy updates. So we're going to do some first readings, first of all. So may I have a motion for the first reading of the following new policies: 3431, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the district; 5634, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms; 7552, student gender identity and revised policies; 5640, smoking tobacco and cannabis use; 5660, meal charging and prohibition against meal shaming; 6150, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and other substances for staff; 7131, education of students in temporary housing; 7320, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and other substances for students; and 8280, instruction for English language learners, as presented. And all the information is available in board docs for the first reading. May I have a motion on that, please, for our first reading? Mrs. Van Sice, thank you. Mrs. Beeger, second. Is there any discussion on any of these policies? I know there's a lot of them here. Any discussion for the first readings? All right, thank you. All in favor then for the first reading? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And now may I have a motion to table these policies so that we will have a second reading and adoption at our October board meeting, which is on October 12th. Dr. Littman, thank you. Ms. Poland, second. All in favor to table these policies for now? Thank you. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We also have our policy update 1510. Now, this was our second reading. We were set to adopt it. So I want to first of all have a motion to take the revised policy 1510 from the table. May I have that motion, please? Mrs. Van Sice, thank you. Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, thank you very much for a second. All in favor to take that policy for the table for discussion? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. So now this is back off the table for us to discuss it. So since our last meeting, there were additional edits that were recommended by our board attorney, and those are now reflected in the amended policy. But I want to ask, does anyone have any additional amendments they would like to contribute at this time for policy 1510? Okay, Dr.
I
Lippman.
missed the amended policy coming my way, but one of the comments I made before was about the clarity about having people sign up in person. So, as they do on the podium historically. So was that added along the way?
Let me pull it up really quickly here. So it's item F, 11F. Forgive me while I pull this up. So if you pull that up, Dr. Lippman, you can see there's a clean version and the edited changes. And I'm just going to flip through it to see if so if you scroll down under sign up, it says the members of the school community who wish to address the board must contact the district clerk to sign up to speak before the meeting starts with their name, address, and topic that they wish to speak. Speakers who read from prepared texts are encouraged to present copies of that text to the board members or make a copy available to the district clerk within 24 hours after the conclusion of the meeting. Sign up is required to speak in order to speak during public expression. So you're correct. That portion doesn't say anything about sign up at the table. I'm just scrolling to see
it used to.
If that's added anywhere.
Exactly.
Mrs. Carey, do you recall if we removed that or if it just never was there?
What?
It was written in the edits to sign up at the podium prior to the start of, and that was edited to say to sign up to speak before the meeting.
Prior to the start of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is it listed there? I'm sorry.
It is not. It was, and it's not.
It was. So originally, because I think we were virtual, we were doing and we were going to continue that they can reach out to Mrs. Carey, but the addition that they are also permitted to sign up prior to the start of the meeting.
Right. So I think the consensus is that we want to encourage people to sign up ahead of time. However, you still can come and sign up at the podium as long as we're not exceeding the 30-minute mark. So if we have 30 minutes, 3 minutes per person, that's 10 people, right? So if 10 people have already pre-registered, then those individuals would go on. They could still sign up, but it would really be a wait list, and they might not be called upon unless someone were to make a motion at the table, then the public expression format, which is what our policy currently says. Any member of the board can make a motion to extend the public expression. However, we have it at 30 minutes for a reason, because this meeting, we have to get our business done.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment on that further, Doctor?
I mean, your point is, again, we can extend the time. I think it's one of our obligations as a board to listen to the community, although in this part we cannot respond, but we can, I assume, at the community forum in October. But I think it should be very clear that people do have the opportunity to sign up in person, because you never know when somebody says something during public expression, and you might say, yes, that's a good point, or I want to add something or do something. And if we want to be inclusive and give everybody the opportunity, we just can't say, well, if you didn't sign up ahead of time, you're out of luck. We're not really saying that, but were not clear enough in my mind to encourage the community to come out and speak. So anything we could do to do that.
So I'm hearing you say you want us to amend it so that we include that language under
Yes.
sign up.
Yes.
And I think we're all in agreement of that we have a sentence that says you can still sign up at the podium as long as time permits. So we're actually not going to vote to approve it yet and that's why we do these readings, right? Because sometimes it takes several months to get it right. And we want to make sure we get it right. And that's why we get our feedback from our attorneys. We get our feedback from our superintendent, our leadership team, and then we also tweak it as needed. So I'm going to ask if there's any other amendments. I know Mrs. Carey's noting that amendment, so we get that added. Are there any other amendments for this policy?
So I'm just questioning, is the amendment that they can sign up at the podium prior to the start of the meeting or at?
So we would keep we would keep the sign up section, and then we would add a sentence to say that individuals may also sign up at the podium if they did not pre-register.
Okay.
Dr. McCleary.
I'm thinking it's still not clear, and I guess I'm piggybacking on what Mrs. Van Cise was saying, that people can sign up at the podium, which is of course acceptable. But I thought in the earlier version, it also said they could sign up in the podium until 7 p.m.
Until the start of the meeting, which is really important.
That wasn't included in what.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that it needs to be, you may sign up prior to the start.
Prior to the start of the meeting.
Once the meeting has started, it's too late to sign up because the district clerk has to take that sign up sheet, bring it over to the parliamentarian so the parliamentarian can be prepared.
But I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's a
parts what I was
good clarification.
And that language is actually, it was in here and was stricken, so we can look back to that. It says at the podium prior to the start of the meeting. So in our review before our next reading, we can look back to that. And
I think it's important that we are stressing that our preference is that people sign up ahead of time, because if you really want to speak, we want to be sure that you're granted that opportunity. We might not always extend a public expression. You know, it's going to be based on what our agenda looks like at that month's meeting. Okay? All right, any other amendments for this? I think we're getting some good feedback here. Okay, so is there a motion to table policy 1510? We will get those things added for next month. Is there a motion to table revised policy 1510, regular board meeting rules, which is our quorum and parliamentary procedure as presented? And as presented, meaning with the edits we verbally discussed. Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. Mrs. Beeger, second. We've had a lot of discussion already. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item G, may I have a motion, please, to approve and adopt the resolution for the certification of lead evaluators as presented? Thank you, Mrs. Van Cise. Mrs. Poland is a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12, finance. I'm going to lump some of these agenda items together. May I have a motion, please, to resolve to approve the budget transfer in 12A, the amended contract for the district's in-school UPK program, 12B, the resolution pilot with Brewster Amherst Preservation Housing of 12C, and the reapproval of the district's corrective action plan pertaining to the 2019-2020 audit of 12D. May I have a motion to resolve to approve items 12A, 12B, 12C, and 12D? Ms. Seeger, thank you. Mr. Viscalia, second. Is there any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to liaison reports. If you have any liaison reports, please submit them to Mrs. Carey. The list of meeting dates are in board docs. Elementary and middle high schools had PTA meetings on September 13th. And there was an ESASB meeting. And Dr. Lippman, I saw your email, and I can cover the Dodge meeting for you.
Okay.
So you can enjoy Yom Kippur.
Mhm.
And are there any other people that need substitutes at this time?
I don't.
Ms. Gallion?
I didn't actually, Ms. Kazmierczak Wagner already substituted, but on middle, there is a meeting that's not listed on the dates, Ms. Carey. Just so you know, I can email you the day,
Perfect. Thank you.
just so we have it on there. So.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Does anyone wish to speak about anything discussed at any of their recent liaison assignments? Okay, thank you. There are no matters to discuss under items 14, 15, or 16. So we are now on item 17, and Dr. Brown Hall, I turn it over to you for our facilities improvement and preservation plan update.
And I'm going to ask our phenomenal CFO, Mr. Matursky, to please give the facilities update and the update on the capital projects, including a potential new capital project. Mr. Matursky.
Thank you, Dr. Brown Hall. As you all know, our music project is coming to conclusion with really fantastic results. At this time, I think I really want to spend just a few moments recognizing the people that made that happen. Certainly, I'm going to start with our architect firm, Cadeni Architects. Ray Bednarski, who is a district resident, he's executive vice president. He has been from day one right through the end in all of our meetings. And I just want to recognize that that's not something that normally happens. Scott LaHouse, his architect, has also been vital over the course of the summer construction, addressing contractor issues and change orders and items like that, and moving them through quickly. Our construction manager, campus construction, Vaughn Miracle, Andrew Malcolm, again, fantastic job getting that stuff done. And I must recognize our own Keith Langlotz. Superb job. You don't know how much goes into these projects really from the daily conversations we have. And I also have to really say this project wouldn't have happened without our music teachers' input, our principals, and a major force in this was Mike Russo. You don't know how much we relied on Mike from the design project, getting equipment information, doing everything that was resulting in enrollment projections for music programs. All of that was done way back 4 years ago when we began, and Mike was really central to that. So, he's involved. And the last person just on that piece is Seth Waltz from AVL. If you go in the space, as you will, and you listen to it, it would not have happened without his professionalism and his ability to put the acoustics in place. So you're going to see that. I think there's going to be some type of a ceremony toward the end of this month, and I think you'll have an opportunity to meet most of those people. So I'm looking forward to that and having you enjoy the space as now our teachers and our students are. Moving to the next big item, we're going to be we have actually already begun the process of looking at a new capital project, in addition to the security project, which was approved in June 2020. We're going to look at district-wide air conditioning. And this project is already, the design pieces are underway. We've met with our architect, which is going to be Cadeni again, and they're going to be using another firm. We also are going to be doing an RFP, which has already been posted on our website. I have 4 firms that have already notified me that they're interested in applying, including our own Campus Construction, who currently works here. So we're going to be doing a site visit next Thursday with these firms, and we're going to take them through 4 different buildings to show them what's going on. That's going to be a very large project, and the plan will be to share updates with all of you from now through December, provide you kind of a range of a dollar amount in January, more detailed expenses by school in February, and then a total detailed presentation in March. So the intent would be to provide a proposition, if it's approved by all of you first, that would go on the ballot in May. So that would be a great project. It's going to be very intense because it will have to happen when school is in session. Unlike some of our other projects, we've always tried to do them when school is out of session in the summer. But we will work those through and we'll share that with you. So that's a really brief summary of where our capital project work is at.
Thank you very much, Mr. McChrystal.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Matrosky. Does anyone from the board have any questions as he's going back to his seat there? Thank you so much. I'm very excited about the future. It's really amazing. All right, so we are on item 17C. May I have a motion, please, to approve the Architect Security Project Contract Amendment as presented? Thank you, Dr. Littman. May I have a second? Dr. Singh, thank you very much. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. Item 18, I have no matters to discuss. Does anyone have anything to discuss under Committee of the Whole? All right, does anyone have any correspondence they wish to share? All right, and our next regular scheduled board meeting is October 12th. Is there a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting? I'll jump up at once now. Dr. McCleary, thank you. Dr. Singh, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Stay safe and be well.